That's one of the fascinating things too about some of these ancient or the ancient civilizations that live down there. Like, how long ago was ayahuasca invented? Like, how many years ago was the first ayahuasca concocted? Because it takes two different plants that are completely different. Yeah. The bush that causes all the hallucinations, you could eat the shit all day and you just get a stomachache. Yeah. But as soon as you mix it with this other plant,
the vine,
the vine, all of a sudden the magic happens. So how did they learn that so many fucking years ago?
There's a beautiful book by Wade Davis called One River. And for anybody that's interested in this stuff, you gotta read One River. It's like this giant, very difficult to read. It's like biblical. But he's following the work of Richard Evans Schultes, who was a Harvard ethnobotanist who went through the Amazon. I think it was like I want to say in like the 50s or the 60s. But he started doing all these hallucinogenics in a research capacity and trying to figure out and trying to really, he was a botanist. But they were saying the statistical improbability of, even if you did trial and error over the course of thousands of years, given that there's 15,000 species of trees, and then how many species of vines and how many species, I mean, you're talking, the numbers are staggering. It's like fucking, you just got to hear like the interstellar music start playing behind your head as you think about this. Like, and somehow they figured this out. It's not like, you know, like maple syrup. Like the first person to burn a maple tree was like, oh, that's good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's one step. We're good. This is a complex chemical reaction that literally opens your mind to other worlds. And for people that have done normal drugs like mushrooms or LSD or something, like ayahuasca is a totally different thing. And
I've never done ayahuasca. How is it different from mushrooms?
It's very different. It's I mean I just feel like
it's basically like DMT, right? It's essentially the same thing. It's
yeah. I mean, I had done mushrooms in college, and you know, like everybody else, and you go for a walk and it's nice, and I can kind of like see music. That's cool. And then like with the you know, and now there's a lot of people who are like, I talked about ayahuasca with someone recently, and they go, oh, I just did ayahuasca last week. And I went, you went to the Amazon last week? And they went, no,
in New York.
Yeah, I did it in a yoga studio in New York. And I was like, okay. I go back, I tell my local guys that, they laugh. They're like, yeah, okay. The thing is, it's literally from a vine. And then, you know, you're mixing compounds in the jungle and boiling it down. And these people live in the jungle, and they go on a diet where they just drink that and what they're doing is they're connecting deeply to like the forest spirit, the truth between the trees. And they're trying to absorb that to become shamans. And they study for years for that privilege. And it's not viewed as a drug. It's not viewed as something that's like, you know, recreationally done. It's viewed as something that's deeply medicinal, that opens up the spirit world. And so, when they hear about people doing it in a yoga studio, that's like, you know, that's like it's like someone in the military having somebody be like, I did a Tough Mudder once. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like you ran in a circle, like good for you. But whatever you could compare it to, it's like there's drugs and then there's ayahuasca. Like I was unprepared. I the first time I did ayahuasca, I had a notebook. I had like an iPod. I was like, I'm going to listen to music. You know, it's going to be cool. I'm going to like write down my thoughts. I had no idea. You know, the shaman comes in and we're sitting in a circle, and he lights a single two candles in the middle of the floor. And you're all sitting in a circle, and things get real quiet, and you start noticing the sounds of the jungle. And all of a sudden, you know, like when you're scared, you just start noticing different stuff. And all of a sudden you say, oh, you know, I agreed to do this. And you go, okay. And you see the look on everyone else's face. And you see the local people who are going to do it with you. And you see that they're not joking. They're like getting ready. You go, oh God. And then he beckons to you. And this guy's sitting there, and, you know, the candles are in his eyes, and he's got feathers off his head, and he's got monkey skulls around him. And he goes, come. And you kneel before him, and he takes a big drag of his cigarette, and he blows medicinal herbs through his lungs onto the ayahuasca. And then he gives it to you, and he hands it to me. And I was like, everything in me was screaming and saying, don't do this. It was like, I was like, if I'm backing up, I don't want to do it, but you're too far in. You can't do that in front of everybody. And I was like, screw it. And I just kicked it back. And then so you go and you sit down, and I'm sitting there, and then the next person goes, and the next person goes, and then we're sitting in this circle. And I remember being like, oh, I think I got this. I was like, I'm gonna be fine. And then I I remember I opened my notebook, and it's all dark, and we're under a roof, but there's no walls, and so the jungle is all around us, and so you could hear, and all of a sudden it started to rain lightly, and I started to notice that the sounds, I started to like try to wash off my hands, that the sounds were coming through my fingertips, and I started to be very concerned with that the sounds had gotten under my skin, and the frogs and the crickets and the frogs and the crickets and that throbbing shh 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 of the jungle night. And then the last thing I remember seeing was that I looked down at the floorboards, and it was like this, you know, it was just like, and I remember seeing the molecules of the wood as I got smaller and smaller and dematerialized and fell through the table or the floor, the earth, everything, and down into like unconstructed universe. And I was down there for a very long time. And if I went into it, it would sound so ridiculous that it'd be stupid to retell it. But it's like you go down so deep that you leave your body. You're in a different universe. You're in like unconstructed dream space. And it was so intense that in like at like 4 a.m. when I came back, I just remember being so scared, and I'd been through so many different universes, and I like the moment I realized I had a hand, I was so thankful. I felt my hand on the board, and was me. I could remember my name. I'd forgotten my name, all this stuff. I mean, you're in, I mean, literally picture like being a consciousness floating in space with the stars and the nebulas and being able to swim. It was wild. And so I came back, and then I looked for the shaman, and I see this hammock, and he's gone. So as the sun comes up, we start looking for the shaman, and we go, where is this guy? And the guy's old. He's like 85 years old. He's one of the old guys. He's got this face, like he's got like permanent, like whacked out De Niro face with like hair that sticks up. You can never tell if he's high or not. And he's always like, and we looked everywhere for him. He wasn't at camp. And then we like later that day, we were like, I guess he left. Like, I don't know. And then like an hour later, somebody was crossing one of the streams, and they found him laying in the stream naked. You know, like in E.T. at the end when he's not doing so good, and they find him in the stream. They found Don Ignacio in the stream, naked, and we wrapped him up and we brought him back, and we said, what the fuck happened, man? And he goes, oh, that was the biggest mistake of my life. He goes, I overboiled it. He goes, I've gotten sloppy in my old age, and I let that brew of ayahuasca boil too much. He goes, I never thought I'd see things like that. That was too strong. He goes, I'm retiring. And I was like, that's the batch of ayahuasca that you give me? I was like, thanks, man.
For your first time?
That was my first real ayahuasca trip. And so the shaman was like, I retire. And he retired until like next month. But
oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was the old guard. He trained the guys that do it now, and COVID took him out.
No way.
Yeah, we lost our old shaman in the village to COVID.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's like you lose this guy that knows. I mean, the last time that he harvested an ayahuasca vine, it was like bigger than a dinner plate. It was a vine thicker than a dinner plate. So like he knew where the ones grow that were like ancient. And the plants changed. You know, the leaves on a young sycamore are different than the leaves on an old sycamore. When balsa trees are young, they have these giant umbrella leaves. And as they grow up, the leaves get smaller, they change, and like plants are complicated. Mm-hmm. He knew how to find ayahuasca vines that no one else knew how to find. And so like when he dies, you just hope that he's imparted that knowledge to the next generation.